Welcome back to Runaway's YouTube channel. I'm joined by Dana Orkowski, and we have quite a long video today.
Yep.
We're going to be doing kind of a whole set review in anticipation of the War of the Monarch Dusk Till Dawn pre-release events. So this is kind of like the Bible video, I guess, for all of the cards in the set that we wanted to make. This is gonna go out, I think, a day before the pre-releases. So with that in mind, I think we wanted to kind of condense the information a little bit compared to how people have done set reviews in the past, where I don't know if we're going to go over every single card individually, but we will be publishing our kind of grading for all of the cards.
Yeah, so we have our grading system. You need some kind of context for these grades, otherwise they don't really mean too much. Um, so I guess I'll start from the bottom and work my way up.
Mm-hmm.
So NEF is a card that you should not be including in any deck. Just straight up. Card is unplayable and will have a negative impact on your games. Anything in the D tier is a card that does not play its role well. It's at the playable level, but it's not doing what you actually want to be doing. It's something that you're like very much settling for. If maybe there's three of that hero in the pot or something, you play these cards. C grade is a card that has a replaceable effect, but is a good role player. This is kind of the bread and butter enablers of your deck. Things like yellow charge cards in Bolton, something like that. A B grade is a card you need multiple copies of for the deck to be good. So these are like your all-star cards. Things like, I guess, your spenders in Bolton, more like Valiant Thrust. It's probably more of an A, actually. Scratch that. We'll show you some examples later. Going into A's, these are cards that are irreplaceable in the decks they should be in. Cards with maybe unique effects that you can't get anywhere else, or just so powerful that you would Mel Slam this card when you see it. And then double A is just a grade we're using for A tier cards that multiple heroes are attempting to draft.
Yeah, and I think the like where we have it ranked is also something like mostly correlated with how we would like prioritize, at least towards the beginning of the draft.
Mhm.
um but I think later on when you're filling your decks out, you want to be, selecting cards as what according to like what your deck needs, so don't just follow the grades to a T. But that being said, let's just jump right into it.
Mhm.
So we're gonna start by going over kind of like the worst cards first, for each class of cards, and then we're going to be moving into like the better cards. And I think we are mostly aligned, but there are, I guess, like some differences, and we'll just like talk about the differences as they come up. So for generics, I think we both had three Fs, which is Red and Yellow Memorial Ground and Talisman of Dowsing.
I think Yellow Memorial Ground and Talisman get a slight asterisk as they are better than Cracked Bauble. They have text on them, so they're like F plus.
Yeah.
But these cards don't do anything, right? At
Uh,
least value wise, you're getting nowhere near the value you want from a card.
Memorial
Um,
Ground is like kind of niche. I
yeah.
could see if you're playing Chain that you Memorial Ground like an unhallowed rights, and that
Mhm.
somehow wins you the game. Uh,
Yeah, that's fair.
but yeah, like these cards don't block. You should not really be drafting these. Uh, when you count like the cards that are left in the pack, you should just assume that this is like the last card in the pack. So in our like D category, I think in general we have a lot of the generic blues
Mhm.
in that category, such as Frontline Scout. We have like out the attacks that cost like two or three, so like out muscle, pound for pound, uh, overload, etc. But you want to talk about like this type of card, like all these like blues that like cost 2, and then also are like attacks that you don't really want to be attacking with.
Yeah, I mean it's very straightforward. Like they're extremely playable. They're blues. They usually attack for more than your weapon in most heroes.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not the blues you want, right? That's why we're giving them a D grade. We're
Yeah.
basically saying every blue in the set is better than the ones we listed here.
Yeah. One of these blues that I maybe want to move up,
Mhm.
Yinti Yanti blue, as I've been drafting it a little bit more. I put it as a D plus because I think for most heroes it's just like you don't really want to play it, but I can see if you're drafting like Prism or Chain that that card is actually pretty decent for you because the
Mhm.
potential for it to block 3 is pretty good.
Yeah, generic blue block threes are super premium, and Yinti Yanti's the roundabout way to get one.
I'm changing
My
my
grade
grade
assumes
again.
that it's active, right?
Yeah, I'm changing my grade again.
I
Yeah, that's
mean, I think
fair.
D plus is about right if you're well Bolton.
Hmm. And then there's another class of cards that we have, which are kind of like yellow. Uh, they're like
Two value
yellow
cards, right?
value. Yeah. So things like Minnowism yellow, or you have like all these like weird yellow like attacks like yellow overload. Um, there's like pound for pound yellow, surging militia, overload. Yeah. Do we have overload yellow here? Yeah, overload yellow is
We do,
also
yeah.
like a D. And it's just like what do you think about these types of cards where obviously they get worse than like they're like worse than a 3 block
Mhm.
uh just like on rate. Do you find yourself actually like playing these at times?
I think these are like my first cuts almost always. These are like the same as the blues, right? Except they're not blue. They don't pitch for 3.
Mhm.
So like however you use this card, it's gonna be below average.
Mhm.
Um, there's some that maybe make the cut sometimes. Just going through the list. No, I think these are all cards that I don't want in my deck, if I can help it.
Yeah, so like all the Ds you don't really want. I had
Yellow
a
Scout's not bad in Prism. I think it goes up a little bit, but there's a lot of better cards to be playing there.
yeah, I've had a couple of teammates try to sell me on Scout. I'm not entirely sold yet, but uh I'm open to interpretation. I actually I want to talk about one of the differences. So I actually had a outmuscle blue and pound for pound blue listed as like a C minus instead of like a D range. And I think like the only reason why I did that is because at least like pound for pound I could actually see like potentially winning like a game off of the dominate effect.
I agree with that. That one you can pitch to like a win con.
Yeah, and then out muscle kind of similarly. Sometimes it just like turns into like go again. Although that one probably is like much worse than pound for
Mhm.
pound.
No, I think pound should be a C minus. I would
Yeah,
like to move my grade.
yeah. All right, out muscle. I'm changing back to a D.
Mhm.
Or doing it live. Uh, and then in the C range are like we said like these are all card. I think once you move from like D to like C range, like these are cards that you're like okay putting in your deck, but you don't like really want
Mhm.
too many of them, right?
Yep.
So we have I actually when I first started drafting Monarch was pretty high on Captain's Call, but now I see that it's like
I
really
was like
only
first picking it sometimes.
yeah, it's really only good I think in Bolton, like really good in Bolton, and it's like pretty good in Chain if you have um you need like a bunch of bounding demigons. But it's actually pretty good if you have like I don't know, like 4 or 5 bounding demigons. It's not really where you necessarily want to be all the time, but like a nice little package.
Yep. Yeah, I think it was the chain CC bias that had me so high on Captain's Call to start.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a role player, right?
Yeah, in Bolton, I actually find Captain's Call like any like 2 pump even
Mhm.
something like Memorial or not Memorial Ground Warmongers or Sidle Yellow. I
Yep.
find to be okay because one of the limiting factors for Bolton is to like actually play like a 4/5 card hand is that you need to like give your charge attack go again. So it's like it's just like you need like a pump effect, right, to get your whole turn going. And
Yep.
so like theoretically, like the Bolton hero power kind of gets you back the value, which is kind of like why you're okay going like a little bit below rate.
Hmm. Makes sense. And it's more flexible than like Courageous Steel Hand, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't have to charge to play this card. You can just
Yeah,
play it
you can
and
just play it,
overload or
give
something
+2. Yeah, yeah.
for a little chip.
Yeah. I think Courageous Steel Hand, I have recently been more high on it, but I've drafted a couple of decks where like if you don't have the charge density, the card is a lot more awkward than just like
That was my
something
deck
that,
last night.
yeah, something that pumps
That's where this
your
is coming from.
yeah, if you don't have like enough charge cards, like sometimes just like the action that pumps your attacks makes it like a lot your deck a lot smoother to play.
Makes
Uh
sense.
and then I'm kind of looking to see what else.
Do you
So
think Exude is a hot take at C plus? Should we talk about that?
yeah, so Exude and I think also like Seek Horizon Red,
Hmm.
we have like in the C range, and you know like if you were to port this card into Outsiders, like it would be really good in Outsiders, right? Like
Oh
Exude would
yeah.
be kind of nuts in Outsiders, and Seek Horizon Red is certainly like pretty good in Outsiders. I don't know. I think the way that Monarch is like, do you think it's like more or less powerful than Outsiders as a whole, like the set?
I think more for sure.
It's more powerful.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a downturn or off turn, on turn kind of format maybe.
Hmm.
But I think the on turns in this format are way bigger. Besides like the nuts bonds line or something in Katsu or
Hmm.
Genji.
Yeah, I think the main difference when you play Monarch Draft compared to a lot of the other draft formats is that I think a lot of the more recent sets, you're like trying to gear your deck up to be able to do like something like pretty consistently like every single
Mhm.
turn. Whereas in Monarch, you're trying to make it so that your deck has like this one turn that just like wins the game.
Yep, agreed for
Which
most heroes for sure.
yeah, which you get that a little bit. It's like most similar, I guess, to drafting like a combo Katsu deck in Outsiders, right? Like you have like all the pieces, and so you're just like trying to set up like you're trying to set up this like I don't know 15, 16 point turn at least
Mhm.
to put your opponent on like the back foot.
Yep, and I think go agains are hard to come by, so you can't really just play a couple cards and then end with the 0 for 4. It's usually you're blocking 2 to 3 cards and throwing it, and there's also a lot of block 2s in this format. Um,
Yeah.
there's still good cards, right? Like we have them at C plus or whatever. Like 0 for 4 is always going to be pretty good. Exude has a lot of upside, but they don't win you the game. They're just kind of pretty good filler cards.
Yeah, I think Exude I have tried to make it work in Bolton because like you know Exude
Right.
is still like it's like a 2 card 6 that you can give a go again with with the Bolton hero ability.
Mhm.
But when you think about like opportunity cost or whatever, like a lot of the times if you could give if you could give like an attack go again instead of like spending cards to do like 6 damage, I think I would rather like block 6 and just like use the extra action point to attack with my weapon.
Mhm.
And so Seek Horizon, like we mentioned that go again's kind of hard. Like why do you think we have Seek Horizon also pretty low?
Well, I think all the same reasons. Like that is a source of go again, but that's not the go again I want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, value's just not good enough there.
Yeah.
I think the rest of this tier is interesting. It's mostly all slightly below rate go again attacks, like we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, and
Yeah.
then uh, slightly below rate pump cards, which are effectively go again attacks, right?
Yeah. One card that I'm seeing right now that doesn't like exactly fit the bill
Mhm.
is Rally the Rear Guard Yellow. And I think Rally is like one of those kind of interesting cards where it's like if you haven't played the format, it might not make a lot of sense, but it can be like pretty awkward to block a lot of
Yep.
times, and I think being able to have like two cards be like average block value 2.5
Mhm.
is worth like worth like a bump above like a D. Like if I was running like a yellow generic attack, I don't really want to run any yellow generic attacks,
But
but
we have the blue in this tier, just to clarify. I
uh
don't think the yellow's there, is it?
it's in the C tier.
Oh, okay. I wasn't scrolling. That's on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rally the Rearguard Yellow is in the C tier for generics. It's just like the blue as well, like for the
Mhm.
same reason.
Yep.
Uh you get like a little bit of extra value on being able to discard a card um and converting like sometimes like Prism and Levia have cards that don't have like any block value. Uh and you do end up with like a lot of two blocks, so like being able to convert your two blocks into like 2.5 blocks, pretty good actually.
Yep. Yeah, the card overperforms. There's also a lot of dominate in the format, and
Hmm.
just having to have it on their dominate turn is pretty strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, outside of the go agains and the pumps, I think we mostly see some of the blues we're higher on, and we see like the medium rate attacks, right? Like Yellowstone Woundhog is a perfectly fine flesh and blood card, but it's not gonna win you the game. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
it's okay. It's okay if you have to play it.
yeah, yeah. You're not happy to play it, but
Mhm.
usually it demands like a double block from the opponent. If you're Bolton and they don't double block it, then it's also like a source to go again. So I mean, like there's like these niche use cases.
Yeah, I think all the generics have do a really good job of like being more role players in some decks versus others and having overlap too.
Yeah. Uh, one card that you are a bunch of cards that you have in the C category that I have in like B minus. I just like moved it up. I wanted to talk about
Mhm.
are kind of like yellow go agains. So like yellow belittle, yellow brandish, yellow warmongers, and I'm I'm not sure. So like I'm actually since we like made this list and I've been playing more. I'm like think I'm like a little bit lower on yellow belittle.
Mhm.
Yellow brandish I actually think is quite good because I do think that brandish in Bolton and Levia kind of demands like a block.
Yep.
Just because like the weapons are so good, and then Bolton especially like if you if you let the Bolton connect to the brandish, then
Oh yeah.
they're getting like the second hatchet swing, and like the second hatchet swing is where all the value comes in.
Yep.
So I kind of like I think I like yellow brandish the best, and then Warmonger's recital yellow. I kind of talked about it a little bit, like in Bolton, and also like in Chain to be able to like unlock all of your
Mhm.
well deck cards like Bounding Demagon and stuff. I've seen yellow Warmongers kind of overperform a little bit compared to like what you would think. It's kind of like in Outsiders, like yellow Scout the Periphery in like Riptide
Mhm.
and stuff. Like you just need
Oh sure.
like sometimes like cards like these, they're just like they just end up being good because they function in like a unique like part of your like turn construction,
Mhm.
and you just kind of need like a bunch like a certain number of these types of effects.
Yeah, I think the grades that you're giving speak to how premium go again effects are in this set.
Hmm. Then when we go to the bees, like there's not a whole lot of bees. One class of cards that we have in bees are poppers. Uh,
Yep.
so I think like pretty universally, this is gonna be in all of the. I mean, you've seen it in all of the draft tips videos if you guys haven't checked them out. But I think every deck needs at least like one or two.
Yeah, no, Prism's a bit of a terror in this format, and having poppers really swings the matchup a significant amount.
Yeah, I just played against
And they're just good cards.
yeah, I just played against the Prism. That was playing Luminaris, I think. Like it didn't really matter that they were playing Luminaris for like this particular turn because but like I was like playing Bolton and I attacked them like they they attacked me for like 11 on the first, or they attacked me for 14 on block 3
Mm,
on the first turn, and then on the second turn I like attacked them back for what's it called? I attacked them back for like 11, and then they just like no blocked everything, right? So they're swinging back at me with like a 5 card hand or like a 4 card hand. No, yeah, they're swinging at me with a 4 card hand, and they start with like a spears, and I just pop it, and
mm,
and it's just like
yep.
these cards can be like such big blowouts in a matchup where usually like the prism is like out valuing like everything that you do, but I mean like the reason why all their cards are printed that way is because like they get blown out by poppers.
Mhm. Yep,
Uh,
so you kinda see a density of them.
do you have a particular order or like ones that you like better than the others?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly hero dependent. Not that that really matters because you shouldn't ever see more poppers than you actually want, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
But we can talk about it a little bit. Just going through the list. Um, yeah, I think pound for pound is pretty good because of the dominate. It gives everyone this win condition, right?
Hmm.
The cost can be a little prohibitive though.
Yeah,
For decks that have go again, like Bolton, specifically, I guess.
yeah,
Um, Rally the Rearguard, I think, is just always consistently good. I think it's like the most B a B could be. Um, you're always just getting 6 on attack, but like we talked about before, being able to block 5 with 2 cards is actually pretty good in this format.
yeah.
Um, Stony's like maybe the best value on just the card because it's usually a 7, or they're blocking 2 cards, which is also good, and it costs 2. That's just good in every deck.
Yeah.
Bolton has some upside, right, if it gets pumped or if
Hmm.
it's not blocked. That's it for the B tier.
I think when I first started playing the game, I thought that Stony Woundhog was just like by far the best one out of like these.
Sure.
At least like the common ones.
Mhm.
And I feel like as I've played the game for longer, uh I actually think Rally is probably, in my opinion, like the
Yep.
one that fits in most decks. And I find myself actually cutting Stony. Like I mean like you have to be drafting like a lot of good cards, but like I've drafted decks where I've had cards like enough like good cards such that if I wasn't playing against Prism, I would be cutting poppers,
Oh, yeah. I've
and
been there too.
I end up cutting like Stony or pound for pound before I cut Rally.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So yeah, like but yeah, like for the most part they're all the same. Like you usually don't really want to be attacking with these cards, but if
Mhm.
you attack with them, it's fine.
Yep, makes sense. Outside of those, we have all the premium go again cards: Red Belittle, Red Brandish, Red
Hmm.
Warmonger's Recital, both Celos spelting yellow and red.
Yeah. I wanted to
Um,
talk about Belittle.
yep.
So a lot of people are gonna come into Monarch Draft, and they're gonna have fond memories of casting Belittle in either like Fi or Chain or Briar, whatever like the case is.
Mhm.
And I just want to have a disclaimer that Belittle is not that good in draft. It's a lot more like like even if you have the minnowisms, like it's like more niche. You're gonna have a lot of cards in your deck that don't get hit by minnowism. I think I drafted a Bolton deck that had I think like 2 red minnows, and for me like the best use case for the belittle was like setting the minnow for like when I drew into like a yellow bolt of courage or something to like start my turn.
Mhm.
Um, the card is still really good, but it's not like it's not guaranteed that you even get like red and blue minnowisms, and it's also not guaranteed that you're gonna get like enough density of cards that you can reveal or use the minnows on.
Yeah, it's funny when I drafted Monarch when Unlimited first came out, and everyone's strategy was find the Belittles, find the Minnows.
Yeah.
And it seemed correct. Like And it's not that far from correct, but, like, I think if you're getting the red belittle, then red minnow and blue minnow are pretty absurd. But, like, don't be drafting your yellow belittle and feeling like, "I have to find any color of minnow to make this good."
Mhm.
Like, both cards they do different roles on their own, and that's fine. Um, and obviously if your deck supports it, tutoring is also strong, but I think B is the appropriate grade for belittle and not, like, A+ like people used to have it.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I wanted to talk about one card that is here that I slept on when I first started playing Flesh and Blood, but now I think it's really good, which is Adrenaline Rush.
Mhm.
Adrenaline Rush is like one of those cards where uh it's like a little bit more variable. Like it ranges from being kind of insane to, just like not that good when you're ahead on life. But I think particularly in Bolton, especially like when you want to sometimes like go first and build up soul, having a card like this, which is like technically like a catch up card, I think is pretty strong. And I have it like a little bit better than all the other like red generic attacks.
Mhm.
Well, what do you think about Adrenaline Rush?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. I only like it better than the others in, Bolton specifically.
Hmm.
Because otherwise we're hoping for a 2 for 7, right? I think I'd rather just have Stony Woundhog in the other decks.
Yeah, I think in chain sometimes like if
Mm,
you go first, you can like get a shackle early and then you can like manipulate your life so that it's like still pretty good because you can go like either play like a one cost blood deck card or you can like you attack with Galaxy Black into the Adrenaline Rush, in which case it's pretty strong.
mhm, makes sense.
And then I also want to talk about Surging Militia,
Me
which
too.
is,
I had that next.
yeah, this is a card where I think at the beginning of when I first started playing Flesh and Blood, everybody like touted this as being like the best common. I think I also personally
Mm,
thought that it was like one of like the best generics to be or even like cards to be picking like at the beginning because it's like really hard to block. But
it can be that. It sometimes is that.
yeah,
That's
sometimes
what I
it's
like
just
about
like
it.
a 2 for 5.
Yep.
I think this card is best when you pair it with pump effects. So
Yep.
like if you like play like a Seek Enlightenment or like a Warmonger's Recital, then it can be like really good. If you're brute, sometimes or not yeah, if you're like brute or what's it called, or Shadow Runeblade, like sometimes you can like play like Howl on it, but it's like a little
Mhm.
bit harder because then you have to like find another thing to like spend your resources on. But like basically like the point is like I think back when I first started, like everybody was like, I guess like really into blocking, and now
Mm,
I think we know a little bit more, and it's like sometimes you have to be like selective about like whether or not you want to block.
yeah. If
And
your health is high and your hand is good, this card is a 2 for 5, and you don't care about it at all.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's why I gave it a B minus. I think it's the build around part is why I gave it the minus. Like, if you have a pump, this is like an A
Hmm.
on that turn, right?
Yeah. Um, I think we can talk about Zealous Belting. So Zealous Belting, if you guys take a look, we actually gave red and blue Zealous Belting the same grade, and yellow Zealous Belting is actually higher than either of the two, and mostly just because I think the heroes that you want to be drafting Zealous Belting in are Levia and Prism. And for those heroes, the blues most commonly have 5 power. And
Mhm.
so it's like the easiest to get go again for the yellow Zealous Belting. I think in Levia, red is like a little bit more reasonable because
Mhm.
you can pitch 2 cards and then also attack with a meat axe. But in Prism, In Prism, like the most common like play line that you would have with Zealous Belting is like you might like pitch like a yellow Herald if you wanted to give the red Zealous Belting go again. Or otherwise you need like a blue Enigma Chimera. I don't know. Like Prism also has like fewer things I think to pay one resource for.
Mm.
So like in general, it's not a bad card in Prism, but there's just like less optimal things I think to be doing with Prism than like if you want to be pitching two cards for the Zealous Belting.
Yep. But also on the Prism side, if you're playing against Levia or playing around poppers, like just having generic go again cards is premium.
Oh yeah, definitely. One card that I have actually at as a A minus, but you have in the B range is Warmonger's Recital Red.
Mhm.
And I think the reason why I put it in the A minus range is because on our grading scale we listed like irreplaceable type of effects. And I
Mhm.
think for Bolton and for Chain, I have these like non-attack pumps as being kind of like an irreplaceable type of an effect for different reasons. I think for Bolton, you need like a certain number of ways to give like your charge cards a pump so that you
Mhm.
can start like all your nuttiest turns start with like a charge card first because you're like minusing it's essentially like effectively like minusing your opponent's blocks.
Mhm.
And I think without the without a card like Warmonger's Recital, then they can just like no blocks and then your turn is over.
Yeah, if you don't have exactly via Vanguard, you can't do these big turns without pumps.
Yeah. So I have it as an A minus for that reason. Like
Mhm.
I actually take or I actually view like Warmonger's Recital Red as like a pretty good signal card to go into either Bolton or Chain if I see them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Uh
Should we talk about the A's?
yeah, lastly we're talking about A's. These are I think for the most part self-explanatory. Our muscle is just like a source of go again. Tremor kind of hits like for everyone. Like every class has an ability that banishes cards.
Mhm.
And some classes might use it like a little bit worse than the other classes. But even in like the worst case scenario, if it's like a 1 for 4, like none go again, that's not a bad place to be.
Yep.
And
Agreed.
yeah, and Nourishing Emptiness is just like the best popper in the game. There's just like
Mhm.
one, there's like insane blowout potential if you're going first, then you can play Nourishing Emptiness. Or if you're Leviah and you like banished
Yep.
away all the attacks in your graveyard, which
I
happens
lived that dream
sometimes.
yesterday.
Yeah,
I killed one prismatic shield by making that play. I did a bellow, cleared the graveyard. Here's my nourishing with dominate.
yeah. So I mean, like, I think the card in general is just like really strong. Even at like its floor is going to be like a 3 block popper, right?
Yep. And a
So
6 attack. Like it's
yeah.
yep.
So I mean, like those are the reasons why we have those cards in the A range.
Yep. I think I
Uh,
have Tremor at like an A minus, but because it's an A minus in every deck, I gave it the double A grade.
sure. Um, Now I'm gonna filter to uh, wait, wait. Let's talk about the light cards. So light and light equipment. Okay. Uh oh shoot. We forgot to talk about equipment. All right, let's talk about generic equipment first.
Yeah, let's jump back.
Okay. So generic equipment, for the most part, I think Ironhides are all okay to pick up, but
Mhm.
I don't pick them as high as like blocking equipment or even like Seekers and Outsiders.
Sure. I agree with that. Yeah, I think it's like one is nice to have in case of dominate, or if you're in a zero block hero, it goes way up.
Hmm.
A hero with zero block cards, that is. Um, 2 is where they're quite good because now you convert any yellow or blue into 4 block, and
Yeah.
then if you happen to have 3, it's like a bailout for missing one of your class equipment, and it's you get one insane play where you pitch a blue and block 6 potentially.
Yeah, I was spectating Michael Fang playing a draft, and he was playing Prism. It was like kind of like a medium Prism deck,
Mhm.
but kind of like the reason why he ended up 3-0ing the draft was on the back of playing like 3 Ironhide. Is just like there would just
Yep.
always be like some turn where he's blocking 6 for the card.
Yeah, I played against him that draft, and I had a very janky Bolton build where I had like 3 overloads and 3 Seek Enlightenment red,
Yeah.
if that's my card. And that was my whole game plan. And as soon as I drew the combo the first time, I saw his equipment. I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
I can't play this. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah. So yeah, like I think it is. I mean, like I think when you if you're drafting with people who are a little bit more knowledgeable, like everybody kind of is keyed in on the fact that like the class equipments are really strong.
Yep.
But if you do get like a full set of Ironhide, usually it would be like everything minus the hat if you can get like either Ebonfold or Halo. But I mean, like even if you have Ironhide hat and you just have like 3 pieces of Ironhide, it can still be pretty strong on its own.
Yep. Yeah, don't sleep on them.
Time skippers, I think we both gave it a C plus. I only really like time skippers and chain.
Yeah, I think Chain's the deck that actively wants it.
Hmm.
It's like it has use cases in every deck.
Yeah,
They're usually inefficient use cases, but it's like on the board ways to use a whole hand, right? If you're going second and you whiff, or
yeah,
you do a big turn and your opponent blocks out.
yeah. For me, like the scenario where the opponent blocks out is actually the one that probably comes up
Mhm.
like the most often, where like it's really hard a lot of times. And this might be like take I guess not since outsiders you kind of get the same thing where sometimes it's like really hard to just like play your whole hand.
Mhm.
Um if you're playing like Riptide or something. And you kind of get into the same issue in Monarch where you're gonna run out of action points.
Yep.
So just like having time skippers in your deck makes it so that you can, for the most part, at least like play like equivalent of like a 3 card hand's worth of attacks.
Mhm.
Uh, we have Blood Drop Brocade listed as double A. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, outside of Chain, like Iron Weave is certainly better than this card.
Yeah,
Um, and the other 3 heroes, this card is great. And even in Chain, if you don't have your Iron Weave, this card is great. I think every hero has reasonable plays to make with this. Like Leviathan, if you Dread Screamer, every on hit now for a Dread Screamer or go again 2 cost is threatening a
yeah,
weapon swing after.
yeah,
In Prism, you have infinite ways to use this because you always have Prism ability to activate. You have 3 to pitch for your auras to attack with go again. Um, you can get hit on your opponent's turn and pitch a blue and play a 4 cost aura. There's like infinite ways for Prism to take advantage of this. So it's quite good there. Chain's similar, right? You're dealing Arcane. So, sorry, Arcane doesn't trigger this. Scratch that. But in Chain, like you have so much go again that like at some point in the game you'll get the extra resource, and then
yeah.
Bolton's kind of similar, where his power cards I think are typically 1 costs.
Hmm.
So this allows you to, and a lot of the times it's like you're debating if you're throwing like a Valiant Thrust for 7 at the end, you're missing a weapon swing if you have a lot of soul.
Yeah,
So this allows you to do some of the craziest plays. Like you can go V into weapon into Valiant Thrust, and that's probably like 25 damage or something
yeah.
if they block.
Um, Another use for Blood Drop Brocade that wasn't mentioned is if you do just like have like 1 piece of Ironhide and your opponent is attacking you twice, you can take the first hit and then Ironhide and use the Blood Drop to Ironhide, which is like like they basically like Blood Drop plus an Ironhide converts into like 2 Iron Rots.
Mhm.
So it's still not a bad place to be.
Where do you think this card should be drafted though? Like I think in my mind every class A is taken above this, and I don't think this card is drafted quite at the A tier. Like it definitely wheels from time to time.
Yeah, I think honestly like, this card probably shouldn't wheel. I would feel pretty comfortable picking Blood Drop in packs where I don't really want to commit, or like in spots where I don't really want to commit
Mm.
to a class super early. Or if the pack is like kind of middling, like so like in the strongest packs where there's just like all these like cards that if you pass them you're like sending bad signals, like I would probably take like the strongest class card. But you know, like when if you're in a pack where like maybe like one or two of the classes are strong and the other two are like middling, and you're not sure if you want to commit, then I don't think it's a bad pickup there, even early.
Makes sense.
And stubby hammers, you get, I gave it a B plus because I think it's like really good in chain and sometimes good in Bolton, but I've heard that you and some of our other teammates have found creative ways to play it in the other heroes.
Yeah, my current kind of theory is that one overload in your deck means that Stubby Hammer is a very good card.
Hmm.
Like we said, down or go again is premium. Um, assume you kind of have to wait until equipment's gone.
Yeah.
But you just pop the stubbies, you play your overload, and you have a 4 dominate go again. That's guaranteed to hit, unless they're playing red rise above, which is fine if they're playing that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think if you're getting 2 points of value, right? It's like Heat Wave going back to Uprising. Like if you're
Hmm.
getting 2 points of value in draft out of your equipment slot, that's like really, really strong. So if you have even just a couple cards like Belittle, um, Brandish, it could be good in every class. Not that I would be building that way in some of them, but it's like if it wheels and you have some of these cards, it's like okay,
Hmm.
okay. Even 1 point of value on your equipment's fine, right? Like we play um, Iron Rot
Yeah. Yeah.
if we can.
Yeah. That's fair. Uh, we're gonna be talking about speaking of Iron, we're gonna talk about a card kind of soon when we go over the light cards.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, I agree. If even if you get like 1 point, how early would you like take stubbies? I think one of the issues with taking equipment is because like like a lot of the picks in this pack in these packs, I think at least like
Mhm.
early on to me like seem very polarizing,
Yep.
where if you take like an equipment, let's say like, and you're trying to go like either chain or Bolton, and then you end up and you pass like I don't know like it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but you're passing like a Seeds of Agony and I don't know like an Arc and a Crackle, you're like kind of setting yourself up for a bad time.
Yep. No, I agree. I think, and I'm kind of I've done this too, unfortunately, but I think a lot of people's early concepts and what they tell people who are new to the format is equipment is very overpowered in this set, and you should take it first.
Hmm.
And I don't think that's necessarily correct, like you're saying.
Yeah, I've had a lot of like pretty good decks that end up on like like two pieces of equipment. Usually it's
Mhm.
like the class equipment plus the hat. And so yeah, like you definitely do want to you do want to get equipment, but I think like because there's there's such a like a gap between like the really good cards in the set and like the kind of
Yep.
bad cards that um I think a lot of people who are like maybe like a little bit newer to drafting Monarch might kind of get thrown off by that. I think like in outsiders for example, there's like some like pretty bad cards, but I think for the most part like you can like fill your deck with cards that are like not awful.
Mhm.
But in Monarch, there's just like a lot of like kind of terrible cards. There's like a bunch of
Yep.
like just like straight unplayables that like are in every pack.
Yep. That's why if you're in a draft where there's like 3 of your hero, you see the decks being really, really poor
Yeah.
outside of Prism.
Hmm. All right, let's move on to the light cards and uh F cards for straight off the bat. Library of Solana, the Fable in the set. Uh, I mean, do pick the card if you open in your draft
If you like
because
money.
yeah, it's like really nice value, but do not put it in your deck. Just
Yeah.
don't draft light because you open a Library of Solana. Don't
Mhm.
draft yellows because you open a Library of Solana. Just put it just put it in a sleeve, put it away, and then just like forget about it.
Yeah, I do think it's important to say that, so I'm glad you did.
Yeah. Yeah, the card is just not very good. I actually had somebody play one against me, and then I ended up drawing all the extra cards. Uh,
I think Tome's like the same, right? You're
yeah,
just not gonna get the payoff enough to justify it being a cracked bobble most of the time.
yeah. It's like if you think about like how Tome got played in CC, usually it's I think at the time people might have been playing Vestige, or it would be like off of like a tunic usually, and you just like you can't get that, and you also have like less reliable ways of putting cards in your soul. So yeah, it's like an F, it doesn't block.
Yep.
Alright.
It is way better than cracked bobble though. Like if you're in a deck that plays cracked bobble, this is now like almost B or A tier, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
Just because there is upside, but it's unlikely.
yeah. So let's go over the D's now in the light category. So a couple of no blocks here. We have blue and yellow glisten. I actually put like a C minus for yellow glisten, but it's like a caveat. So I think yellow glisten is only really playable if you have like a Luminaris Prism deck, and in which case I think yellow glisten's actually pretty good, just because it's like a yellow that gives you go again. Plus, like if you like get a shield, you can put like counters on your shield, and then they're like go again attacks, and then it also like when you pay for it with a yellow, like you just get go again, like a fine like 2 card earn.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, yeah, like the card, like I would suggest not to put any glistens into your deck. If you're Bolton or whatever, the costs just like don't really line up very nicely.
No, agreed. Soul
Um,
Food is a card that does nothing except for turn 0. And
yeah.
Bolton, it's like kind of cute.
Oh, I actually even think that playing. I think if you go first as Bolton and you play Soul Food on turn 0, it's potentially worse than just like charging and then
And
arsenaling a
Arsenaling.
card.
I think
Yeah,
it is.
yeah. So I mean, like these plays are all like kind of cute.
Yeah.
They're kind of I wouldn't make them too often. I put Seek Enlightenment Blue as like a D plus, but I think that's just because like I never really want to cast it, and it's also like most of the time when I'm playing it in like a class that like I'm not really needing like non-attack actions to block with. But it's like splitting hairs.
Mm,
Uh,
makes sense.
let's talk about the C's.
Hmm.
So most of the C's are going to be kind of like situational cards.
Yep.
So we have cards like Impenetrable Belief, yellow, which is like pretty good as like a sideboard card into like Levia or Chain. Impenetrable Belief red, which is kind of like the same thing. You have Blinding Beam red. I actually might move that card up a little bit. Blinding Beam red, blue. Blinding Beam is Blinding Beam yellow also. Yeah, Blinding Beam
It's in
yellow.
here, yeah.
Yeah, is like a C. It's like most of these cards are all like kind of niche.
Hmm.
Um, the light pool is actually quite strong, I think in general, just
Yep.
because there's a lot of there's like 3 blocks in the pool. Uh, Actually, a card that you put in the C tier, I put in a B tier for Rising Solar Tide, and I think just like speaking about like how I'm kind of differentiating everything. I think I view anything that like blocks 3 as being like in light as being kind of like a B tier type of card.
Sure.
Uh, but yeah, like all the C's, they're just like kind of niche. Red Glisten. I don't I think I normally would have put Red Glisten in the D tier, but I think the only reason why I have it in C tier is because there is the potential like in Bolton to like
Hmm.
get like an extra hatchet swing if you have like a 2 blue hand. So you can like do like a charge attack and then you like attack with your first hatchet glisten and then attack with your second hatchet. It's like super niche.
Yep.
If you end up with like the I don't know like the 13-14 blue Bolton deck. Um But yeah, that's like kind of where you want to be. You don't want to be drafting like too many of these cards, but I think all
Mhm.
I would always be happy like having them in my deck.
Yep, agreed. Some number of them.
Yeah, like at least like in the sideboard to have access to them.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
you said earlier. I think Cs are usually like you want one, maybe two, and then Bs are like you'll play every copy.
yeah. So then we have in the Bs most of the block threes
Mhm.
that aren't like the best versions of them. Impenetrable Belief Blue, I think, is a card that kind of gets slept on. I've seen it go like super late in a lot of the drafts that I've been in. And I think that if you're drafting a light hero, you kind of want to like most of the time, like you want to be prioritizing at least like one or two copies of this card,
Mhm.
just because if you're playing a light hero, you generally are like a little bit more defensive, and if you're playing Prism, you also like hungry for blues.
Yep. Yeah, if you ever played Briar, like you know that blocking forward through blue is incredibly powerful.
Hmm. Yeah, and then uh other than that, like Seek Enlightenment kind of falls under the same category as like Warmonger's recitals type of effects.
Mhm.
For Bolton, for Prism, they're like a little bit weaker. I actually find like Seek Enlightenment to be like better the worse your Prism deck is.
Yep,
Like
makes sense.
the more janky your Prism deck is, you kind of like build your own heralds.
Mhm.
Um, let's talk about A's. So, uh, we have Red Seek Enlightenment. I think, because how important Soul is for all the light heroes. So you have like all the cards that interact with Soul. So like Seek Enlightenment, Rising Solar Tide, Illuminate, Soul Shield, Invigorating
Yep.
Light Red. Like there's
All the
a
same, just
yeah,
get shield.
yeah, they're all like a common thread. They all get you Soul, and just like being able to get Soul without either needing to get blown out via Phantasm or without needing to charge, I think is really powerful.
Yep, completely agree. I think Soul Shield might be the best card in this set.
Ooh. Definitely like one of the safest picks. I mean, like
Yep.
there's a lot of really good cards in the set, like like Luminaris, Red Scythe.
Oh, that's fair. That's
I'll
fair.
get to those.
Yeah, yeah. Why
Halo of
not?
Illumination,
Mhm.
for light equipment, I think is just gonna be super strong for every light hero. And I think that if you're drafting light, that you don't really want to pass this card. And if you get past this card, I feel like it's pretty safe, at least to like align yourself like to be biased towards drafting a light hero.
Mhm. Agreed. Yeah, I think Prism's fine without it, but Bolton like really wants this card.
Yeah.
Um,
Vestige of Soul, I have had the fortune to draft with it twice, and I have gotten 0 extra resources from it, and it has always blocked one, but blocking one has been quite useful.
mhm.
It either just like gets you like 1 extra health, or it lets you block, like a Red Herald with 2 cards, or it lets you block a Lunar Tide Plunderer, or a Galaxy Black that's not buffed. It's just like there's a lot of cards that blocking a breakpoint does matter.
Yeah, no, I think it's a huge deal. That's why class equipment's so good too.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go over now. We're on Shadow. This card pool is a lot worse, I think.
Yes, agreed.
So we have the Fs, Blood Tribute, red and yellow. I would strongly advise you guys to just like never play this card in your deck.
Yep.
I've seen people submit like Red Blood Tribute against me, and then they're like pitching it or something, and it's just like this card is just not good. Toma
Yep. It's
Torment,
that simple.
yeah, Toma Torment does not block. You are normally short on action points,
Hmm.
and just don't play this card. And we have Blood Tribute Blue as like a D. I think just like any blue
Because it's
automatically
blue,
has like
yeah.
some merit. Howl from Beyond is actually kind of interesting where it's a D, but I wanted to talk about kind of like its role. It's like to me, it's like kind of like a mini sideboard card because if you're playing as like Chain into Bolton, like you do kind of want to have some non-attack actions to block with, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, because it's reasonably likely, unless their deck is like perfect, that they'll have to present a charge card without a pump, and it's on you then to if you need to block, which Chain actively wants to block most turns. You need down attacks to do so.
Yeah, there's like a big difference between like blocking with an attack and giving the pump and like the potential
Mhm.
like action point versus blocking with a non-attack. Maybe even like you leak damage, but it's you end up like saving more damage in the long run. And Guardian of the Shadow Realm, much worse than Soul Shield. Uh, it is good at stopping dominate,
Mhm.
and it is good at I guess like avoiding fatigue. But for the most part, like the Shadow Heroes don't really want to be playing super defensively. I think they're the ones that kind of want to close the game out.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And then so we go to C tier cards. Few Shadow Red. We had an interesting discussion, I think, when it was like first announced that we would be drafting Monarch for nationals.
Mhm.
This card went from like in my mind being like not super playable, and then I drafted like a bunch more. And this card's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's inconsistent. Like I think I would bring my grade down a bit. Like when it's good, it's very good.
Hmm.
But if you're drawing it before you've started banishing anything, it's like drawing a
Oh
red
yeah,
seed
yeah,
Agni, right? Like it's the worst card you can draw almost.
yep. It's like Spew Shadows in all the colors is one of those cards where if you're like scrounging for playables, you don't really want Spew Shadows because
Mm.
like you never really want to always present it. But if you do have the space to like have some extra cards that you can put in your sideboard, I think Spew
Yep.
Shadows often is much better than like a replacement level like random junker card.
Yep. Totally agree.
And
Yeah, I
then
think the rest of these, it's a bunch of like below rate stuff, right?
yeah,
All playable cards, all a little bit below rate, or they like block for 3.
mhm.
I think Eclipse Existence is probably the most interesting one to talk about.
Oh yeah, Eclipse Existence. I think I have had that card be like really good in both Levia and
Hmm.
Chain. I see a lot of people I think struggle with Shadow Heroes, particularly against Bolton.
Yep,
And I think that Eclipse Existence is actually kind of like nuts into Bolton.
I agree.
Uh,
I think my grade is too low here.
mhm. I think that like for Chain, like obviously you can like get back, like a Blood Deck card that you can play later.
Hmm.
But for Levi, even like being able to like save Blood Debt and being able to like pressure Bolton off of Soul, that's usually pretty unlikely that you can get like an effect against Prism for Soul. But I
Hmm.
think being able to like turn off Blood Debt is pretty big.
Yep, I agree. You have a couple of Bs in here if you want to talk about those.
Yeah, I it's like the same thing with the light cards. I think anything that's 3 block for me, I'm just like kind of okay with putting in the B tier.
Oh,
One
sure.
thing one thing about the blood deck cards that you do want to be careful about, and it is fair, I think, to put them like a little bit lower. I think like you don't really want like a lot of yellow void wraiths in your deck. In if you're drafting like either Levia or
Hmm.
Chain. And so like maybe I'll move these down to like B minus, but I think being able to block 3, they're like I would not look to cut these cards first.
Sure, that makes sense.
Then when we go to the cards that we both have in our B category,
Hmm.
so I want to talk about Mutated Mass. I think this is a card that is a little bit, I guess, like confusing, like where it goes.
Hmm.
I think it's like pretty good in chain. Especially on like your big turn. And I think in Levia it's not that good, although I have had somebody kind of beat me up with it in the past.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't played with the card in draft yet, so I'm a little hesitant on my grade here. I can definitely see use cases that you can play towards in chain specifically because it's free to pitch early, right? Like you want to be pitching blues.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think for me, like my B grade is like mostly for chain's use case. I'm thinking
Mhm.
especially like when you want to do, you know, your big turn where you activate, like maybe you activate your time skippers or whatever. It's like pretty consistently, you know, like a 1 for 4. But it is a little bit better than Ghostly Visit Red because, you know, like you said, it's a blue, so you can pitch it at the beginning of the game to, you know, set it up. And I find that pretty important
Mhm.
for chain.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, and then I mean, like, there's not a ton like let's talk about like what the difference between like a B tier card and like an A tier card is. So we only have like shared like 3 A tier cards. We have Howl from Beyond Red, which is
Hmm.
kind of good in both Levia and Chain.
Yep.
Chain because he can banish it more reliably, I
Hmm.
think, for like value the first time, and Levia because she can like play it multiple times.
Yep. And she's also a little more action point starved.
Yeah. Lunar Tide Plunder Red. I think this is probably like the best shadow card.
Yeah.
Um, and I take Lunar Tide Plunder Red to be like a signal for me to want to like go into Shadow Heroes.
Yep. It's just extremely disruptive against both light heroes.
Yeah, and then Void Wraith Red is probably like the best like singular turn that you can do with Chain, but
Hmm.
in Levia, there's some applications as well where you can like play it off of Underworldly Bellow,
Hmm.
but I find that to be like a little bit less consistent.
I agree. I think it's an A in chain and it's like a B in Levia.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think the main difference between A's and B's is just the rate, right? Like we have the yellow version of each of these cards in the B tier.
Yeah. And then like some cards like Ghostly Visit, where it
Mhm.
can be really good if you like play from banish, but if you play from hand, it's very awkward. It's like below rate.
Yep.
Um, as far as equipment goes, Karen Husk is less good when there isn't like a command and conquer floating around. Uh,
Yep. Fair.
yeah. But the card is still like quite strong. I think if you plan to close the game out, I think if you plan to close the game out within, you know, like 3 turns even of like when you activate the husk, and assuming that you take blood dead every turn, which is not even necessarily true if you're playing Levia, having an equipment that blocks 3 is kind of nuts.
Agreed. Yeah, I think this has to be an A in Levia, but I haven't played with it yet, so I'm hesitant there. But I think in chain it can be a little problematic.
Uh-huh. And then Ebb and Fold, this is I think similar to Halo of Illumination, just like a card that you almost always want to have in your Shadow Heroes. And if you get past Ebb and Folds, it's like a pretty good sign that you should probably be hedging towards, you know, drafting a Shadow Hero.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Now we're gonna go over the Brute cards. All right, Brute has no Fs
Oh wow,
apparently.
that's pretty cool.
These Pulping Blue. Uh, Pulping Blue actually, in my mind, is better the better your deck is. But if your deck is bad, then it's worse.
Yep, that makes sense.
Uh, as far as the other cards, like these are just like cards that you don't really want to be playing. Boneyard Marauder Yellow. I think a lot of people when they're drafting Levia, and this is going to be like a theme I think for some of these cards, where like just because attack has like 6 power doesn't necessarily mean that you really want a ton of them.
Hmm.
Uh, Boneyard Marauder does have block value, so it is useful as a popper, which is like a plus for it.
No, Boneyard's a 5.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking of Hungering Slaughter
Mm.
Beast. Oh yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Boneyard Marauder is a 5, so that's why it's a D.
Yep. And Smash doesn't block and is also a 5, so
Yeah,
also why it's a D.
yeah. Agreed. Okay, for C's, I think these are all pretty straightforward. They're like all kind of below rate. One thing about like Levia is that you don't really want to put like a ton of blue blood deck cards in your deck
Mhm.
because it puts like added pressure. Like if you're going to be taking like 2 or 3 blood debt during the game, it's not a huge deal. Like you can find ways to like win. You know, you take like 2 or 3 blood debt, but if you like fill your deck with blue blood debt cards, then all of a sudden like it's pretty fast. You're gonna take like 5 or 6, and then it's pretty much unwinnable.
Yeah, there's a balance there. Like blue block 2s are often better than blue block 3s with blood debt.
Yeah. Um.
Probably go to the Bs.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to mention Tear Limb from Limb, another
Mm.
like trap card. Do not like. It can be really good, but it also like most of the time is very bad. I think for me the only reason why I don't have it in the D category is because it has Go Again. So
Yep,
there is the potential for it to be really good.
that makes sense.
All right, let's talk about the Bs.
A lot of
Uh,
Bs.
yeah,
This is
I,
probably like every 6,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
every like medium value 6 card.
Yeah, so there's like a couple of categories. First, there's non-attack actions.
Hmm.
So if you're playing Leviah, you kind of do want to have a bunch of non-attack actions in your deck because they block 3. It's mostly it's just Underworldly Bellow. But then also Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell is like a 3 block non-attack action. These cards are actually really good because they don't have Blood Debt and they block 3, and
Yep.
you also can pitch them and close the game out. In general, I think like the yellows are probably the best of
Hmm.
all of them in my opinion. And blues are also good because you can use them for pitch.
I agree.
Uh,
These cards table way too often. Like pick your bellows, guys.
yeah, yeah. Convulsions red is we have in the B category just because
Hmm.
most of the time when you want dominate, you want it at the end of the game, so it's like a little bit harder to pitch, like your red card to set up for the end of the game. And then yeah, like you said, we have all of random the random sixes. I actually had Writhing Beast Talk as like an A minus just because it has dominates. So like even though it's like a little bit harder to pitch,
Hmm.
I find like the base stats of having like a 6 dominate to be pretty compelling.
No, I do think that's reasonable. I also think Dread Screamer yellow is interesting. I think every color of Dread Screamer is very good. Like
Hmm.
having Go Again access is super important. So like that's where you want to sacrifice on not having a 6 attack or a
Yeah.
6 base attack. Cards like that have Go Again.
Yeah, I think the general trends is like if the card has potential for go again or dominate, it like bumps
Yep.
it up a little bit. And if it's vanilla, then uh it's good if it, blocks 3.
Hmm.
Oh, let's talk about Doomsday. If
Sure.
you do open a Doomsday, should you play it?
I think so.
And yeah, and we said that you probably should. It it's actually not like too bad to get what's it called, to get 6 blood debt,
Hmm.
I believe, in your banish zone. Like and being able to have a turn where you can like play some attack and then play like a Doomsday at instant speed and then get like an action point off your hooves or something and then attacking for 6 after that off of 3 cards is really compelling, and
Hmm.
your opponent basically has to kind of deal with
Yep.
this demon that's gonna like stay around.
Yeah, the upside is completely absurd and it's pretty realistic to pull off.
Mhm.
Depends on when you draw it probably, but
Yeah, but even if you draw early, it's a blue, right?
yeah, it's like no big deal. It's a card that doesn't block, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
um the A's are gonna be the blue and yellow convulsions because I think like setting up dominate is like a pretty big part of the win con. There's I guess like 2 categories of cards here.
Hmm.
There's there's 6 power attacks, or like 7, they're like 7 plus power attacks that hit graveyard that don't banish or don't necessarily banish. So you
Yep.
have Smash and Deadwood Rumbler
Hmm.
and Pulping. And then you have cards that banish, but uh have like really good effects. So like Dread Screamer, Bravely Growl doesn't banish, but it's like it contributes to your blood debt.
It's like your biggest payoff, I think.
Yeah. So I think having like you ideally want to be having like a couple of these A's in order to have a good Leviathan deck.
Yep,
And
I
they kind
agree.
of work together. Because you need like the Smash and the Deadwood Rumblers in the early game, and then you want to have, Dread Screams or Graveling Growls for later on.
Yep. And then Soul Harvest just does everything a Leviathan could ever want
Yeah, it's both
on one card.
that's both pitch, it's block,
And it's a win con.
and it's a win con if you haven't been banishing.
Mhm.
Uh we do have a F equipment, which is Hexagore. I have tried to make this card work, and it just doesn't really. The game doesn't go long enough, I think.
Yeah, theory says that it could work in some spots, but I don't think it's worth trying to make it work at all.
Yeah, and Medax is so good.
Yeah.
Hooves, however, is you need this card if you want to be drafting like a good Leviathan deck. Like,
Yeah, we didn't really do A pluses, but this is an A plus.
yeah,
Y- like unwinnable games become free when you have this in the right hand, and this makes every Graveling Growl in your deck so much better.
yeah, because you don't even need like a Dread Screamer.
Hmm.
You can just play it off of you play like a Hungering Slaughter Beast.
Yep.
All right, going on to Runeblade cards. Eclipse is an F. Do not play this card. This is like the opposite of Doomsday. It's like impossible to play unless
Yep.
you.
Maybe it's a D minus for being blue, but agreed.
Yeah.
Don't build around it. Don't think you're pulling it off. Play it
Yeah.
in your deck if
Even in
you just
CC,
need
it was
blues.
like sometimes a little bit difficult to get it off.
Mhm. No, you have to change your whole game plan and your deck lists to make it work, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sonata Arcanix. I have this as an F. You have it as a D minus. It's I think pretty unlikely to have like a high enough non-attack action count to be able to reliably get this off. I
Yep.
think the percentages just offhand, like if you have like a 50-50 split, is about like 75% if you pay 0 for 1.
Mhm.
And then most of the time I feel like in draft it's closer to like either like a 2-1 or like a 3-1 split, and it just gets a lot worse.
Yeah, so I didn't give an F because it depends. Like if you have an absurd amount of non-attacks, it gets better. And if your opponent's playing ultra defensive, you could just dump your whole hand and like hope to present like two arcane or something, and then just have a follow up. I
Yeah,
don't know. I think it has uses. I don't think F is fair because it blocks two, and
yeah. You know,
or maybe it is. If you're casting it in like a normal chain deck with like four non-attacks in the deck, it probably is an F because you just spent a card to do nothing.
yeah. I'll put a caveat. If you have like not including the Sonata Arcanix, if you have 8
Mm.
other non-attack actions, I think it's worth considering.
Yeah.
Um, then we have actually not a lot of D's, so
Mm.
only you put Sonata at a D. Blue Riftbind is the worst blood deck card. Don't You're not going to
Nope.
usually have you're not usually gonna have like a Riftbind end game.
Yeah. But it's blue, it blocks three. It's like a detrimental blue block three potentially, but
Yeah.
you can afford some of these.
Yeah. And then chain's like a little bit weird when we're giving out these like rankings, because some like half the chain cards, or like a quarter of the chain cards, work well with another quarter, but then they work
Yeah.
poorly with like the other half of the chain cards. But then like those half of the chain cards work well with each other.
Yeah, there's a lot of synergy pockets going on.
Yeah, so I think in general for like all the C cards, I actually might move Bounding Yellow up a bit. I have it as a C plus, but I have been pretty impressed when other people play it against me.
Yeah, I think it's just exactly what you said. This whole tier is just cards that they're B if you're building around them properly and synergizing, and they're C, C minus if you're not.
Yeah,
Maybe even D.
yeah. Not like a whole lot. Piercing Shadow Vice Red is the worst red blood debt card to be drafting. Kind of similar to Blue Riftbind, so just like keep that in mind. And then in the B category is pretty wide. Anything that does like arcane damage
Like all
automatically,
arcane.
yeah, automatically gets like a B. Arcane damage is going to be like your main like way of closing games out, and then also a lot of your cards have like synergy based off of arcane damage.
Yep.
I put in the A category, but you have it in the B category. Yellow Rip. I'm gonna move down to B plus, but
Okay, I was gonna say.
yeah,
I wanted to talk
I
about
think Dimensional Gateway Red I have been very impressed with because it does arcane damage and it also like usually
Mhm.
draws you a card.
Yep.
And then Seeds of Agony, yellow. I mean, I think yellow is probably in my mind the best color of Seeds of Agony.
Yep.
So like within that like range. Yeah, but then all the other Bs, they're pretty straightforward. One thing I want to say about like which blood deck cards you choose to play, like Seeping Shadows blue is really good if you have a bunch of bounding demigons, but then it gets like significantly worse if you like don't.
Mhm.
And like similar, like Riftbind red is like really good if you have a bunch of seeds, but like if you don't, then like don't really be drafting. Like use your head. Like some of these like cards, like the ratings will like fluctuate depending on like what other cards that you get, and then you should
Yeah.
also like adjust your picks accordingly.
Yeah, I think Chain especially, you need to just practice a bunch of drafts, and there's no better place than the Runaways Discord channel.
Yeah. We'll include a link.
Mhm.
Most of the A's are going to be the cards that do like the cards that either do 2 arcane or the cards that lead to like your biggest turns.
Mhm.
So I wanted to talk about Seeping Shadows yellow because I think this card I see get passed a lot, but in my opinion
Okay.
is one of the best chain cards.
Mhm.
Uh I think Seeping Shadows yellow is probably like one of the most consistent ways to like have like a good end game, but there's like a caveat because it also like usually relies on having something like a ghostly visit or a bounding demigod that you like pitch, but
Mhm.
like for the end game, the some of like the better blood deck cards are actually the end up being like the 2 cost cards, and then so like that is one thing that you have to be careful about. And then oh, let's talk about invert existence.
Yep. Just a blowout card.
Yeah. This card is good for I think multiple reasons. One, it's blue pitch at base and chain's like pretty resource hungry. But also like when you pitch it for the end game, you get to there's like a lot of cool things that you can do with it, right? Like you're pretty much always going to get the arcane damage through, so like it turns on
Mhm.
anything that you have like rift binds or whatever. It does damage without, using an action point, and then also um you get to kind of like do your turn and then like spend all the resources and then like when like maybe you take a blood debt from it and then you get to like tack on like an extra 2 damage onto your
Mhm.
turn that you otherwise normally wouldn't have been able to. And it's also it can be like kind of a blowout in the chain mirror, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you banish some of their blood dead in a turn. They're not taking 4.
Yeah.
Have to deal with it later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a good card. And then I think Soul Reaping might be the most powerful Flesh and Blood card ever printed. I think it's definitely up there.
Yeah.
At least in terms of like what's on the text. Like things like Awakening obviously have like other
Yeah.
cards that make it more powerful. But like if
Sure.
you read this card, you like the first time you read it, you do like a triple take because you're like, I get all of this and it makes me resources.
Yeah, and then just so people, because I forget about this all the time. Soul Reaping has go again if you're
Mm,
attacking somebody with soul.
yep, don't forget that.
Yeah, so don't forget that. But you do need to also keep in mind the go again can go away if they use their
Mhm.
soul. So if you're like playing against a prism, just don't not shackle, and then they have only 1 soul.
Yep, good tip.
All right. We're moving on to Illusionist and Illusionist
Well, I
equipment.
think we have equipment at the top.
Oh yeah, sorry.
We didn't hit those.
Yeah. Aether Ironweave. This is like the card that similar to who like all the classic equipments. I think with the exception of Dreamweavers, like you want to have this in your deck.
Yep. And even Dreamweavers you do, but this one's just
Yeah.
so good. Resources, blocks for one. Don't
I,
have to say much more.
what do you usually end up using the resources for? I find that usually when I have an Aether Ironweave, it leads me to either want to activate or I either want to have like a time skippers to pair with it, or I want to have like a rip through reality.
Yep. Rip is the first card. Rip
Mhm.
through reality is the first card that comes to mind.
Yeah. And then Dread Scythe, this card is basically like a one card win con. Like you can draft this card and then draft like whatever. You can draft this card, draft 10 blues and 20 bananas, and you can probably win some games.
Hopefully bananas that blocks me, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Having this card kind of changes the way that you should evaluate the cards almost completely.
Yep.
Like you need to prioritize blues even higher than you otherwise normally would have. And then cards like Piercing Shadow Vice, like Piercing Shadow Vice red turns like kind of nutty with Red Scythe because you just like always have the access to the arcane damage. So you know, like something to keep in mind. But yeah, this card is kind of nuts. If you open it, you should probably pick it first, and if you get past it, you should probably take it and either heavily consider going chain or just hide it from the other chain players.
Yeah, it's one of the few cards like that I will probably hate draft every single time, unless my deck really needs something.
Mm-hmm. All right, now we're up to Illusionist cards. Illusionist cards are actually like I think pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
There are all the heralds. I said this in our video, but to me, like almost all the heralds are pretty much the same. So it's just like whatever color they are.
Yeah. Prism wants a card and soul. Nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Too much more than that.
Yeah. So the yellows are definitely like the worst.
Yep. Spears
Yellow.
are kind of dangerous. That's why they're a C. Like,
Yeah.
if there's no poppers in the format, these are probably A's, right?
Yeah, definitely.
At least the red.
I think I want to put in a caveat. I think the first spears that you draft is probably like a B level card. But the reason why I have it at C is just to discourage people from, you know, just like blindly like picking a bunch of spears.
Makes sense.
Enigma Chimera is pretty bad. And which is like kind of surprising, like if you're used to drafting, like for example, like in Dynasty, like Ember Moss Senpai was kind of nuts.
Oh, uprising, yeah.
Yeah, and Enigma Chimera Red is like the same as Ember Moss Senpai, but they're like pretty much, and it's just like much worse.
Yeah, it's not bad by any means. Like it's a C. It's just it fills the role of having a high power attack in your deck. It does nothing more, and there's better options.
Yeah. And pretty much like because it doesn't go to soul, like I think like Prism's main power is like, you know, having access to Go Again, Titan's Fists, and just like nobody else has those.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about where we have like all the auras?
Yeah, I think a lot of the grades, so like auras are incredibly strong if it doesn't cost you much to put them into play, right? But it costs you a lot to put them into play, and like they can actively lose you games if you draw them at the wrong time. Like probably early game they're quite strong, late game they're actively terrible. They're just not consistent, right?
Yeah.
And the rest of your deck is like if your deck is all 7 attack heralds and blues, your deck is maybe the most consistent deck in the format.
Yeah. One thing that that might throw people off is that we have like Genesis as not being like one of the best auras, when I think Genesis like in CC is probably like one of the best, and that's just because I think it's like usually the light illusionist cards are the ones that you want to be blocking with first. And so Genesis doesn't really do anything like the second that it hits the field. I think like the best auras are the ones that they hit the field and they do something. So like either your opponent attacks your shields and you get to do some arcane damage, or like you attack and then your opponent's about to pop, and then you get to send it to your soul.
Mhm.
If you play like a merciful or like parable humility, like being able to like minus your opponent's like popper and then like being able to hit through with your herald is huge. Yeah,
Yeah, I
like
think if you have blood drop, Genesis goes up a decent bit. Just
yeah,
being able to play it on your
that's
opponent's turn
fair.
for one card, like
I
that's where
agree.
it's maybe the best one.
Hmm.
But yeah, otherwise you don't want to be really spending 2 cards to play this because you're either not getting the value or it's just going to be attacked right away.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think if you do draft a Genesis, you really want
Yep.
to look out for blood drop, and I probably, yeah, like you said, would value blood drop higher than a lot of other cards.
Yeah, because that just guarantees you a spectral shield,
Yeah.
more or less, off of one card on your opponent's turn
Yep.
and keeping one extra card.
Um, Not, and then I think I guess like the other card that I wanted to talk about in this like B range, C and B range is Phantasmify. So we
Mm.
actually like differ like a little bit. I might be more on the end that you're at.
Mhm.
I think Phantasmify, I kind of just like lumped it into like the same category as, like a Spears, with like, the downside is in block 3, but Phantasmify, if you do have a Dreamweavers, is actually really strong.
It's absurd, yeah. And I want that in every deck, right? Like, I want one Phantasmify, maybe two. Only plan to play one usually, and one Dreamweavers every deck.
Hmm. Yeah, so let's go to all the A's. So the A's are just gonna be like all the red heralds. Uh Basically like every red herald is an A.
Yep.
Uh
They'll attack for 7 or more, right?
yeah. I put actually I need to revise. I put Herald Tenacity as a B plus just because like it attacks for 6, but I mean like it is still kind of like guaranteed soul. But in some of the race matchups, like
Mhm.
I've noticed when I have like what is it called, like an embarrassment of riches, and I just have all the red heralds, I will cut tenacity in the race matchups where I'm not going to be spending, like the resources necessarily on like making shields.
Yeah, it's definitely less consistently good. I think that's fair.
Yeah. And then also we have Arclight Sentinel in the A category. This card is actually really, really good. Um, and is not like the reason, but like you do want to have a lot of blues when you have Arclight Sentinel.
Mhm.
I was trying to like explain to somebody in the Discord like why I think Arclight Sentinel is so good. I think it's because like Arclight Sentinel automatically trades like one card up, so like you can like use like 3 cards, like the 2 blues and the Arclight Sentinel, to trade for your opponent's whole turn,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I think
Like
if you have 2 blues, it is always good. That I
yeah,
agree with.
yeah. And then plus like if you play against any shadow hero that has blood debt, like you're also doing damage to them like via blood debt.
Yeah, because it's pretty common for, like, a Levi to start with, like, a Bellow, and then even if you're giving up your whole hand, like, I've been in that spot,
Hmm.
um, it's just worth it, right? Because they lost this pump, it's out of their deck. Now they have to either well, they have to waste an attack, which is probably gonna banish more cards, right? Like, it's just
Yeah.
quite strong. And it's like a late game win con against Chain.
Yep. Now for equipment,
Mhm.
Luminaris is an A. This card is kind of nuts.
Yep.
It's a
Agreed.
little awkward if you get Luminaris late in the draft and you just drafted a bunch of blues.
Yeah, because it warps your deck quite a bit, right? Like, your whole game plan is now just pitch yellow, play Aura, or play Herald, rather.
Yeah. What's like the minimum number of yellows you think you should have in like a Luminaris deck?
I don't know, maybe like 12,
I think you can get by
10.
with like 9.
Sure.
You get like about one every hand because like you don't have to play like multiple things, but like having
Mhm.
the option to just like do like play 4 card hands with Prism is kind of nuts.
Yep. Agreed.
um Dreamweavers we have in the B range, I think, just because like Prism is a little bit less reliant on equipment. It's like not like the other heroes where like you kind of need the class equipment or else like you're not doing like the most powerful things that your deck could be doing.
Yep. That's all it is.
Yeah, Dreamweavers I find really good when you're playing into Chain.
Mhm.
and also pretty good when you're playing the Loaya, and a little bit less important when you're playing the light heroes.
Yep, I agree with that.
Yeah, and Phantasmal Footsteps is an A because it's kind of like a reusable Ironhide, which is like pretty good. It lets you like like be more efficient when you're making spectral shields with Prism's ability, but then
Mhm.
also you just get like insurance against poppers. Like if you it's like it shouldn't really come up, but like it's mostly I find would come up like if you like keep your 4 card hand and then you play like the spears first.
Yeah, it makes your spears way better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but most of the power is gonna come from just like getting like an extra bit of like efficiency on your hero power.
Mhm.
Cool. We're almost done, and we're just gonna do warriors now. So this might be a little bit harsh. We put Raiden as an F.
I think
I
it's because, like, the card looks like it should be good in draft, and it's just not, usually.
Yeah, I think that Raiden is playable. If I got a Raiden early
Mhm.
and Bolton happened to be open, I could see it being pretty good. Like Raiden is actually like really nice with Take Flight.
Yep.
And if you do have Raiden with like Take Flight and you play like a Dust Path Pilgrimage of like any color,
Mhm.
it's just like kind of crazy.
Yep. I think
Uh
it's fair. This is more of a warning grade, I think, than
yeah.
a true grade.
Yeah, because like most of the time when you end up drafting, like if you follow kind of like the ratios that we are suggesting for what a Bolton deck should look like, you're not going to have all these charge cards and like ways to give the charge cards go again in order to
Mhm.
make the Raiden really good. But because you're just gonna like naturally have like other things that you're gonna put your deck into your deck. So that's just like what
Mhm.
it is. Just like if you draft it, just know what you're getting yourself into.
Makes sense.
Um, for the D's, you have like a lot of the rando yellows
Mhm.
and some blues. I actually have some of these blues as like C's. I How many blues do you usually like? I find that I kind of want like more blues in
Yep.
Bolton than most people. And like my reasoning for it is just that like your most powerful cards like Dustpath Pilgrimage,
Mhm.
whatever, Adrenaline Rush, V of the Vanguard, Spellblood, whatever the case is, all kind of require you to have blues.
No, I completely agree. I think I want, like, 12 at least.
Yeah, and then if I have like extra blues, it's also not a big deal because you can charge them.
Yep. Yeah, like, if I have no yellows, I want more than 12 blues, but I wanna be pretty pitch slanted, I think.
Yeah. So I mean like that's where like most of the D's are. It's just like the most like below rate. I will say so like second swing is probably like one of the worst cards for Bolton, but they're actually really good in the mirror.
Yeah,
Kind of
I
for
gotta move my grade up because it does do its role really well, which is to block
yeah, for
charge
this
cards in the mirror.
yeah, for the same reason that, like bellows are really good.
Mhm.
Um and I've had some drafts recently where, like I don't really want to be playing second swing yellow, but if you can get it off, it's like fine.
Yep.
Uh Other than that, like a lot of the C's are and moving on to C's, like a lot of the C's are uh some of like the worst charge cards that you can get.
Mhm.
Um
But you
Cross
need
the
charge
line.
cards to
Yeah,
play the deck.
Cross the line I think is just like the worst red charge card. Let's rank the charge cards. Charge attacks. So
Sure.
for the commons, what do you have? I think Express Lightning is the best one.
I think it depends. I think I'm fine with that in, like, a bubble. Like, I had a turn I played Built-In last night and had a turn where I could lead Express Lightning, I could lead, Bolt of Courage, and I did Express Lightning because I just wanna do max damage.
Uh-huh.
It was like a V turn or something.
Yeah. I think for me it's just like the flexibility of either you like charge
Oh
with
yeah.
it, or you just play it as a 0 for 4 that blocks 3.
Yep, that comes up a lot.
Yeah, I think for that reason I have it. But
Mhm.
then yeah, Bolt of Courage is definitely in contention, along with Take Flight. Um, I have Take Flight as an A minus. I'm gonna move that to be like the same grade as Express. I view I think Take Flight is the card that probably most people value the highest.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's usually not right. It depends on what you're getting. Because I opened my last draft with like 2 Valiant Thrust Reds, a Via Vanguard, and I was like, this deck only cares about getting take flights now.
Yeah, yeah.
And like Battlefield Blitz. Like if you get those one costers, those are like your payoffs because you get to go take flight into those and then into the weapon without needing any other pumps to happen, right?
Yeah, I think Take Flight, you definitely want a couple, because Take Flight is probably going to
Mhm.
be your best starter on your most powerful turn that you have in your deck. But then
Yep.
if your deck is like all Take Flights, then your deck blocks kind of poorly. Uh it's because it's like much more reasonable to like do like a 3 card hand off of like a 0 cost charge card or something like that.
Yep.
Um let's see. Other cards to talk about. Dustpath Pilgrimage and Plowthrough I have kind of like in the same category. They're actually like super efficient when you have
Mhm.
soul.
Yeah, I think my grade's too low. You talk about this a lot. It's like you need to balance your spenders and generators in terms of soul.
Yeah.
And these ones that bump your weapon are just they're all like 2 card 8s, right? Which is super efficient.
Yeah. Even the yellows are 2 card 7s, which are
Yep.
still fine. And then actually like if usually like when you play, this is like something that um matters for Bolton a little bit more. So like for Bolton, the damage usually ends up being like a little bit more impactful than in other heroes, because like usually like other people are going to be so like disincentivized to block against you that if you put together 2 like semi strong turns, then your opponent is basically like gonna be like in the block mode like
Mhm.
constantly. uh Lumina Ascension, you have it as a B minus. I have it as a B plus. Well, most of the Bolton Majestics are like really strong. Lumina Ascension I think is probably one of the weaker ones, but I think I just put it high because it can generate soul for you.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit more of a build around.
Yeah.
Like this is definitely an A potential card. But if you just shove it into like every single Bolton deck, I think on average it's around BB minus.
Well, surely
That's
it's. I
pretty
mean,
good.
like Lumina has to be better than like a Dusk Path Yellow, right?
It's about the same, I think, right?
Okay. Uh, I find it just better
No,
because
that's fair.
because it nets you soul.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe it is just an A minus then.
Yeah. And then and the other I guess like category of cards, and we kind of like alluded to this, is that we have in the Bs is cards that kind of care about charge. So stuff like Battlefield Blitz and Valiant Thrust. These are cards that are going to be in your most powerful turns, but are actually
Mhm.
really awkward for the most part to play on all your other turns. So I would say that these cards have like a pretty high grade for like the first copy, and then each like subsequent copy for me is just like much worse.
Which card is that?
Like all the cards that like care about charge, like Battlefield Blitz and Valiant
Oh,
Thrust.
yes. Agreed. Yep. They all block there at least, which is nice. So
Yeah,
like I think like more than one is always you still want because the redundancy is nice.
yeah. But like I care. I would like when you're drafting, you want to like kind of look at your ratios to make sure that you have
Mhm.
like enough of this stuff. Um, Everybody I think knows that View of the Vanguard and Spillblood are just kind of nuts.
Yep.
Before we move on to the equipments, I wanted to talk about Courageous Steel Hand.
Yep. That's a good one.
This was a card that I originally like didn't have super high, but I find like similar to what we said at the beginning when we were talking about like the generics and like needing like Warmongers or Shadow, like things that pump, like you just need like a couple of these types of effects in your deck. And so
Yep.
even like the yellow ones I think are fine. Like they're like the what's it called? The Scout the Periphery. Like you just need it to make your turn go.
Yep. Just kind of required to play Bolton
Yeah. But then also
consistently at least.
yeah, but then also I think like the other nice thing about Courage that you don't get from any of the other cards is that Courage has like really good synergy with Take Flight, or if you like manage to like have, you know, like another pump.
Mhm.
Just because you can Courage your weapon, and then so
Yep.
like anytime that you get to swing your second weapon on Bolton, you're usually plus on that turn.
Mhm.
So finding ways to pump your first weapon attack is like really good.
Yep. Makes sense.
Um, Lastly, let's talk about the equipment. So Valiant Dynamo, uh, if you open one, congrats. Uh, I think that just like on the pure basis of the block value, like it's actually not that hard, I think, to remove counters from it, and I would expect like in an average draft that you can like remove counters on it at least like once or twice.
Yeah, no, I think it's an easy A, not A minus for me.
Yeah,
Like even just once, that's an A, right? Because the boot slot's pretty weak,
yeah, agreed.
unless you're competing and giving up like a high pick for Ironhide.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think Dynamo seems kind of very strong.
Yeah. And last card that we're gonna be talking about in our set review, Gallantry Gold. This card is nuts.
Yep, it is the nuts. It's just like it's an onboard one card 8, which is so ridiculous.
Yeah,
So it's either like an off turn or you pair it when you're trying to close the game. Like I've used this card just to get +1 damage on the turn
yeah,
when it means my opponent is blocking or taking lethal damage.
yeah. I think in exchange for Bolton having, you know, like maybe like a less overtly powerful card pool,
Hmm.
I think Gallantry Gold is probably like the most powerful class equipment. And yeah, you know, like great reason to go into Bolton if you get past Gallantry Gold.
Hmm.
And we made it before the 2 hour mark, which I think was our goal. Um, so I hope that this was kind of useful for everyone just to get like an overall view of our thoughts. We didn't talk about every single card,
Hmm.
but just try to listen and re-listen to kind of our thoughts on like how we're evaluating like these types of cards. And we'll publish the list of all the ratings. As you might have heard, we are a little bit fluid in where we have all the cards. But yeah, like leave a comment if you have any questions. And good
Or
luck
if you
to
disagree on these grades at all.
yeah. If any feedback, you're like, oh, I don't think that this card should be whatever.
Hmm.
Uh, Leave a comment, and good luck to everyone at your pre-releases. Hopefully you guys can win those cold foil heroes.